Good deal. All right, so today our guest speaker is Brett Wilson with Walking Miracles Family Foundation. We've got a bio. I sent it to you in email, but I think Brett would probably be better giving his bio himself. He won't really wait to go ahead and read his bio himself, so, but it is in your email too. Come on up here and we'll get started.
Brett.
Brett Wilson. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm probably at a loud enough mouth. So, my name is Brett Wilson. I am the founder of Walking Miracles Family Foundation. Walking Miracles Family Foundation, I started because I am a two-time childhood cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in 1974 with ALL. Back then, there was a 20% chance of children in the area in West Virginia overcoming childhood cancer at that point. I was treated at CAMC. I had 5 years of treatment with chemotherapy, radiation, and cranial radiation because that was the treatment they gave children back then. I went into remission for a year after my treatment, and then I got non-Hodgkins lymphoma. I was diagnosed with my non-Hodgkins when I was 9. During my non-Hodgkins, I blue coated twice. I have what's called a difficult airway, which means my trachea is only so big. So when they give me anesthesia and then they combined the non-Hodgkins that was wrapping around my larynx, God was gracious enough to get me out of that mess, and they revived me. And so my grandmother is an Adventist Christian who is no longer with us. Gran was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 93. She passed away 2 years ago, which is what brought me to stay here in Putnam County. My grandparents lived at Scott Depot for a number of years, and God just so happened to make me the caregiver of my grandmother because she cared for me when I was such a young child. She passed away at 96 with her breast cancer, and we never figured that somebody could get breast cancer at that age. And so when I first started looking at Walking Miracles, I have a master's degree in counseling. I got my master's in that so that I could help people that have issues with mental health related to cancer. When I graduated, there were a lot of opportunities because nobody was really looking at that as an issue for families. And so I ended up going out of state and went down to North Carolina, did an internship at Duke University because they had formalized a patient program specifically for counseling cancer patients, and I was able and fortunate to be able to be doing my internship there while I was doing my graduate school. I got my undergraduate in counseling as well, and it was about that time I lost my best friend and my cousin, who was my math tutor from the time that I was in grade school through college, because math was one of those disabilities that I had had due to all the chemotherapy and the radiation, because it causes a lot of cognitive issues for children, especially when most kids are diagnosed between 2 and 5, and the treatment usually is about a 3-year protocol for most of those kids. And so about 2006, I started having long-term complications with my cancer treatments, and I didn't have what they call a survivorship plan to even know what to look for. So I started experiencing all these things, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And in 2006, I had my gallbladder removed. And then 2 years after that, I started having heart problems that I didn't know that I was going to be having. Couldn't really figure out what was going on because my weight was fluctuating and I was tired and all these things. Come to find out, I was working in retail at the time and didn't have any health insurance, and found out that I needed to have a pacemaker put in at the age of 35. So that was exciting, so I came back home. And when I came back home, I became part of the State Cancer Coalition because I really wanted to know what had changed from the time that I was diagnosed as far as support services for people in the community. Where are they going to get help? Because when I was finished, basically when you're done, they say, good luck to you, hope everything works out, if you need anything, come on back. Well, when you're having all these side effects, and I'm sure that there are a lot of mothers in here who are concerned about their children, when you're having it and you have nowhere to go, it's really difficult to kind of wade through things. And people just don't have anywhere in the community to do that. And so one of the cards that you have is the travel card. When we started our nonprofit and we're registered in the state of West Virginia, and we're a 501c3, and travel is the biggest issue in West Virginia. The average drive for our families is 2 hours one direction. And so, let's see, that would be this one. So the average drive, whether they go to Morgantown, whether they go to Charleston, whether they go to Cabell, is 3.5 hours one direction. And they save money. Most folks that are diagnosed with that time frame, one income has to come out of the family. So if you look at the statistics, which are based off of applications that we receive for travel, 38% of the income that's left in the household goes to food, gas, and lodging. And that's outside of how do I pay my other bills. And so when we started looking at those types of things, we were like, okay, what else can we do? And I'm just gonna steal some of my own cards so I can follow along with you. I know what they are. So what I tried to do with my nonprofit was I tried to think, what did my mom and I get that somebody else needs? And so when you look at the card here, or the one with the kids, patient navigation, what patient navigation does, and is for, is so when somebody is going through the trials, you have somebody else to help you. There are so many different things that go on when somebody's diagnosed, and you probably have known people that have been diagnosed with cancer, trying to figure out the home you're at, whether you're a child, adolescent, young adult, or adult. And it can be mind-boggling. And so the purpose for the patient navigator is to do the work for you while you deal with family and the situation itself. And then the counseling, a lot of people need help with that, so we try to connect resources to these families and coming through Walking Miracles so that we can do that, and we work with several different hospitals. As part of that issue with travel, what I found out was most families here in West Virginia, if they're diagnosed with brain cancer, eye cancers, or bone marrow transplant, they can't get them in state for pediatric cancer, so they end up going out of state. So then we ended up from the 3 hospitals that we were working in the 15 other hospitals outside of that. So now we're in 18 hospitals throughout the tri-state area trying to get people back and forth for treatment. So what we do is we have a fund, and most of our funding comes from either donations, or we find corporations to support us, or we look for grants. And what we do with that is we provide $250 twice a year. So now we're up to $500 of assistance for each family that sends an application. And what we've done is we filtered it through every hospital. So we've sent out the applications to the hospital, social worker, or nurse. They call us and say, we have a need. There's a family from West Virginia that needs help with travel. They send us the application back. We then send the gas cards to the hospital so that they can give it through the social worker. And that's how that program is operated. To date, we're in 33 of 55 counties right now. That doesn't count Maryland, Virginia, because we lost those folks in our map because we're trying to coordinate with the folks. So the patient navigation, we just recently got somebody hired. Her name is Jennifer, and she does a lot of the stuff with financial navigation. So she has all kinds of resources to help these families be able to take care of some of these bills, co-pays, that kind of stuff. Neurocognitive testing is also on your list. Well, what that is it's testing because a lot of these kids, if they have gotten either methotrexate or a couple other of the different chemos, it causes neurocognitive issues for processing things. So kids can have problems remembering stuff. They can have process issues with reading comprehension, math, different things. And so it makes it really difficult when they're in school, because instead, and my background being in counseling, just because Johnny's showing signs of ADHD doesn't mean Johnny has ADHD if he's had this cancer, because these drugs can help mimic the same issues. And so they get diagnosed with certain things, and it's more of an issue of them knowing how to process information, how to do math, how to do schoolwork, and that kind of thing. So we have resources that we can get them tested so that they can make sure they have the information that they need to have so they can be successful in school and know how to maybe do workarounds, and that's what I had to do with my tutor, that my cousin Nancy helped me find my workarounds to doing math, because I didn't do math very well. So, and then we helped with copays, and we also try to help with survivorship education. And survivorship, more children now are being successful with chemotherapy treatments and treatment. The problem is, once they get here, then the fun starts after the fact. All the medical bills start after the fact of treatment. And so that is really cost a lot of money for a lot of folks. And so with survivorship education, what we wanted to be able to do is to walk out with what they had. What were you treated with? How much radiation did you have? And those types of things. Because then that helps the moms with a blueprint of what to do with their child and what they need to get fixed and what they need to have looked at, whether it be heart, lungs, or what have you. So in my case, because of all the radiation that they did to get me to be able to breathe, it damaged my heart, it caused me to have scarring in my lungs, and some different things. And so we just want to be able to have that information for them, but we also want to be able to connect them to what we call a survivorship clinic. And a lot of the hospitals have survivorship clinics for survivors where they do follow-up, but there's a difference between doing a scan follow-up and also doing proper education on along the way of what you need to know after you get diagnosed with this stuff. So we're working with survivorship clinics across all the different hospital systems that we're plugged into, because I felt it was important for somebody not to go through what I did, because it was no fun walking through this without having help. It's just not right to me. And so then we also have issues with physical problems. We have a lot of kids. One of our kids from Buffalo was diagnosed with ALL in his leg and ended up having addiction issues due to pain pills at 16, and got himself off through his faith and his determination, which is really kind of inspiring to me. And but he has problems walking now because of the treatments that they had. So physical issues can happen. In my particular case, outside of my heart, I'm blind in my right eye because I had a red blood cell get in between my optic nerve and my retina, and so I can partially see. So I wouldn't advise anybody to throw everything over here, because I'll catch it, and it's fun to do when people throw things at you. So, but we also have issues sometimes with speech problems, because if somebody has non-Hodgkins and they're treated with radiation and chemo here, it can cause issues in the throat. Same for somebody that might be diagnosed with lung cancer or throat cancer or those types of things. And so the other thing that we have, as you see on your card, is a chef, because the number one issue for a lot of the kids is obesity, due to the fact that they eat whatever they want to. So when I was diagnosed, Fruit Loops and SpaghettiOs and Chef Boyardee were my favorite things, and that's what my folks gave me. Years later, I had metabolism problems, and so I'm overweight now. So what we're trying to do is to educate the families the right way and have proper nutrition done for them, so that they can have the kids be able to know how to empower their immune systems while they're eating their food, instead of getting sicker because they're eating things that they probably don't need to be eating at that time. And then a lot of times too, with dental issues, anything radiation or chemo related to the teeth, the mouth can have problems and that kind of stuff. So kind of in a nutshell, all we do really is try to connect people to resources and referral networks. And we provide the patient navigation, because we don't want the families to be able to have to deal with that. No mom, dad, or whoever needs to be calling and doing all this stuff, because it's overwhelming. And so that's basically it. That's kind of what we do. You have any questions?
How many clients do you serve?
Let's see, with the travel program, which is where most of our money goes to, I think last year we served close to 30 families, which means in the 4 years that we've done that program, we've given away almost $22,000 worth of assistance. When we did our recent Secretary of State posting for our nonprofit, I think it showed 2% of our income went to salaries, which would have been mine. I work full-time and I run my nonprofit in my spare time. I don't do what I do for money. I'm doing it because nobody did it for me. And I just don't want people having to go through this without the right help. So 7% of our income, I think, went to fundraising. We have a hard time doing fundraisers because we need the families' voices to be able to participate, but if we get them and try to get them to an event on a Saturday, they may not have the money to go to treatment on a Monday. So we can't really get the people to participate the way that we're looking to. And then 88% of the income that we raise goes to program support. So that's the way that I want to keep it. Because that's about serving the families. It's not about serving big salaries. It's not about that kind of thing. It's about giving the assistance to the families so they can get back and forth. And so,
Brett, are there other networks like yours around the country? It's sort of different.
I don't know about around the country. I know in the state of West Virginia, no. I don't know a lot of the organizations outside because we're connected to national organizations and we're connected to some local organizations too.
Just wondering how you didn't have a model to follow as far as.
No, I made it up myself. Because I tried to think of all of the issues, and what we did was, my board's comprised of cancer survivors, and we have a lot of faith-based people on my board, because we believe that prayer is what people go to when they're going through that kind of thing. And I knew that my experience was, I'm 35 years in my experience. I've had 2 pacemakers and an aortic valve replaced, and I'm only 45 years old. So, you know, but God's been good to me and got me through all that. I know what the financial struggle is for cancer. I probably, through all of the things that I've had, I would say I would have been, if it hadn't been for God's grace, I probably would have been $600,000 in the hole.